Hello and welcome to LSU Baseball Tournament Update, brought to you by Hancock Whitney. I'm Patrick McGee, joined here by LSU Baseball beat writer Leah Vann. We're here to talk about the big Super Regional this weekend at Alex Box Stadium. LSU's hosting Kentucky, conference opponent team they played earlier this season. Leah, just kind of looking big picture right now. What's your impressions of the LSU baseball team coming out of the regional, and how things kind of stack up for them going into this round?
It felt like that final game, LSU, was firing on all cylinders. Like everything was kind of clicking. Everything was clicking at the same time, right? Kind of what we saw towards the beginning of the year when they played Arkansas and Tennessee and Texas A&M. You know, their offense was driving in runners and the pitching was very good. So I feel like LSU should come into this series very confident because it has seen a lot of that Kentucky team before. This is a Kentucky team that is mostly the same people from last year. And it's not the most talented team, but it is a very veteran team. So I think, LSU can come off of its performance against Oregon State confident that they know how to drive in runners and they also played good defense, and their pitching was awesome.
Right. Yeah, I guess the only downside is that they had to play a game on Monday, and obviously the Super Regional starts on Saturday, so they've got a little bit of time between now and then to get the pitching staff ready. But I mean, how would you say, as a whole, the pitching staff kind of came out of the regional? Is it pretty in ideal shape, or anything you've seen?
I think LSU definitely used all of its best arms, with the exception of Javen Coleman. Obviously we saw them start with Paul Skeens, but the fact that he was able to pitch a complete game then saved a lot of the bullpen, or like the best guys in the bullpen, for the last 2 days, especially when Ty Floyd's start was interrupted and then Thatcher Hurd had to come in on relief. And usually Thatcher could also be a starter, but he handled that middle relief outing very well. It went 5 innings. And then you have Gavin Guidry come and finish that final inning. And then the next day, I mean, yes, it was kind of a Johnny Holstaff day, but also every guy was able to work more than an inning except for like Gavin Guidry, who came in at the end. I feel like, after a week of rest, which Paul Skeens pitched on Friday, so he'll be going on a Saturday, I assume. That's more than a week of rest again, which is good because he threw like a career high or season high of 124 pitches. And then you've got Ty Floyd. I mean, he'll be pretty fresh because he only threw 71 pitches and he went on a Sunday. And hopefully, everybody knock on some wood, there's no rain that interrupts his start, because that could be huge. LSU only has to take 2 of 3 games here. So it can either rely on Ty Floyd and Thatcher Hurd on like the second game, or save Thatcher Hurd for a third game if the second game isn't going so well. I don't think they need as many pitchers as people think they do going into a super regional.
Would you say Skeens was at his best this past week? How would you kind of say where he stands right now? Is he kind of peaking, or is he, kind of run-the-mill Paul Skeens?
I mean, it's kind of like every outing is his best, right? Like almost, except for the SEC tournament. But yeah, I mean, he was throwing 100 miles an hour in the 9th inning.
Wow.
And which is pretty stellar, I mean, he's got, because of his build, he's not just like a 6'6" guy, but he's also very built. Like, he's also very fit, and, he's able to go longer than other guys. But yeah, I think he is throwing his best because he's able to last longer now. He is a high strikeout guy, which makes it hard for you to last more than 6 innings. But I think he's starting to rely on the defense a little bit more and get a little bit more crafty, so he can save some of those pitches for later innings, right? And so he can kind of extend a little bit longer. So I would say, yeah, I don't know if it's his best outing, because I also have seen him throw like 15 strikeouts, but I will say it was his best outing in terms of being able to throw a complete game.
Right. How much, these two teams have already played. LSU took 2 out of 3 from Kentucky earlier this season. Baseball is so unpredictable, but maybe that earlier series tells us a great deal about what's going to happen this weekend. If that's the case, what do you kind of take away from that series early this year?
Yeah, I mean, LSU opened up with a run rule game behind Paul Skeens, right? So that was, you can feel confident about that. Riley Cooper ended up finishing that game in relief. And so Kentucky, I think it was 16-6 in LSU's favor.
Mm.
So I feel like, the Paul Skeens day is definitely an advantage. You can get off to a strong start. The one loss in the series, I will say LSU committed 3 defensive errors. And so that is something, Kentucky is a small ball team. That's how they have to play. They only have one hitter on their team with double-digit home runs. Mm-hmm. So I think LSU has to be incredibly clean on defense. But here's the other thing. LSU did not have Trey Morgan playing first base against Kentucky. They had Jared Jones. So I think that when you have Trey Morgan at first base, the defense is at least a little bit cleaner in the infield. And so that could be also an advantage for LSU. Kentucky, let's see, none of the Kentucky pitchers lasted long in the series, like their starting pitching. I think like the longest they went was maybe 3 2/3. So it will kind of be like if LSU is able to get those starting pitchers out again, it will turn into a bullpen weekend for Kentucky. Now, I don't know what has changed about Kentucky since I haven't gotten that far. But I think this is an ideal matchup for LSU because they know exactly what they're getting. And I know that Kentucky can say the same thing, but LSU has kind of leaned on some different relievers since that series. Like Thatcher Hurd really wasn't throwing his best. And so I don't even think he played that series. Riley Cooper, they have seen before, but Riley Cooper is incredibly difficult for a lot of guys to hit. And then you've got Paul Skeens and Ty Floyd. Ty Floyd worked 4 2/3 against Kentucky last time. It wasn't his best outing, but he still only gave up 300 runs. So yeah, I think there's a couple of arms that Kentucky hasn't seen out of LSU, and Nate Ackenhausen, and I think they did see Griffin Herring, but not Gavin Guidry. So, I think that LSU has every advantage going into this series.
Is there any team that you've noticed, any type of team that you've noticed that gives LSU a little bit more issues than others, whether it's just the style of play? They had that little kind of inconsistent run that closed out the regular season. But have you seen any type of team that LSU has problems with most?
Yeah, I mean, I think LSU has struggled a little bit against any team with a really good left-handed pitcher. Mm-hmm. Not just a left-handed pitcher, because LSU will hit up a regular run-of-the-mill left-handed pitcher, but somebody like a Hagen Smith or a Hunter Holland from Arkansas has consistently pretty much shut down this lineup for 2 years in a row. So luckily Arkansas is eliminated from the tournament at this point. But as far as Kentucky goes, LSU didn't really have a problem against their pitching. I would say they only scored 7 runs on the third game. And so, take that with a grain of salt. You can win a game scoring 7 runs pretty easily. And that's when Tyler Bozema started, and they exactly tallied the loss. So, but I think the fact that Kentucky is a small ball team, they're going to really lean on that because they know that infield defense, while really strong at the beginning of LSU's year, has recently kind of struggled a little bit. They kind of got it together this past weekend. But yeah, some of those small ball teams will kind of give LSU some trouble because they're not really used to it. But you could also argue that Oregon State, while it had a couple of home run hitters, did try to play a little bit of small ball, and LSU actually played some good defense.
Obviously, Paul Skeens is going to be pitching game 1. I mean, it'd be stunning if he's not. But I mean, how do you see this weekend shaking out? I asked you kind of the same question last. What do you see happening in the Super Regional?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be like overconfident or that beat writer that has some bias. But by all means, I think that LSU is playing its best baseball right now and could probably come away with a win in 2 out of 3. Especially if you have Thatcher Hurd throwing the way that he is, and having Ty Floyd go for longer, I think would be an advantage for LSU. So, yeah, and then I think that everybody's doing well at the plate too. I mean, Hayden Travinski is another hitter that Kentucky has not seen. Cade Beloso, he is also coming on hot, and I don't think he played as much in the Kentucky series. So this is like the same team by all means, but a little bit different. And I think that they're hitting their stride. They're also at home at the box for a super regional. It's hard for opponents to play at the box. So, yeah, I think LSU in 2.
Okay. I'll take it, and we'll see. And next week we'll be talking about Omaha, I guess, if that's the case. And we'll be back here on Friday, 11 a.m. Right now is the schedule to have Scott Rabelais. We'll look ahead to Saturday a little bit. So I hope all of you can join us for that discussion, and we appreciate you joining this LSU baseball tournament update brought to you by Hancock Whitney. And thank you, Leah. And we'll see you at Alex Box Stadium